Sounds pretty damn close. Welcome tonight. My name's Vulture Culture, and we're going to be comparing Cherry Audio's brand new plugin, Trident Mk III, which is an emulation of the classic Trident vintage synthesizer. And then, of course, we're going to be shooting it out against a Korg Polysix. Now, I always get some rotted ass comment whenever I do a versus stream like this downstairs that says something like, why are you comparing two different synthesizers? Of course, they're not going to sound the same. And the reason is because the Korg Polysix and the Trident actually feature the same discrete oscillators and the same 2044 SSM filter chip, which is basically an update to the Prophet 5 filter. And so it's actually a closer comparison than you'd think. The primary difference between a synth like the Polysix and the Trident above is we actually have both a brass and a string synthesizer as well. And we have a second voltage controlled oscillator per voice, whereas on the Polysix, it's basically more like the Jupiter 4 or Juno series, where we have a single oscillator plus a sub oscillator. So we could get pretty close to that sound with Trident Mk III, which is how I was able to match these sounds pretty close as far as it goes. So welcome tonight. If this is your first time here, I want to say cheers to you. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? Thank you guys so much for making this the place to be if you're into synthesizers every Wednesday night on YouTube. Cheers, guys. Yeah, some big shout outs to Cherry Audio for sending this over for me to check out. So we're going to go start with just comparing some stuff. I'm not going to be quite as analytical because, as we've heard before, I'll play some sounds. I'll shut up in a second. But like, for instance, the Chroma Polaris here and the Matrix 12 here, they both have the exact same 33, 72, and 30 and 74 oscillators, filters, and amplifiers, and yet they sound very different. So with that in mind, even though these are probably close, I don't think it's fair to like give them a one-to-one comparison because they are different synthesizers. I'm sure if we had a Trident here, it would sound different than just a Polysix with a single one of its voices, one of its VCOs. So with that, why don't we just jump in on the synth here? I think though that the big thing that sounds so incredible about what Cherry Audio has done is captured the feel of that filter. In this case, it's a little beefier on Trident Mk III, which isn't a bad thing. Shout out to that second 500 milligram gummy. The hardest thing for any software synthesizer to do most of the time is capture the flavor of an analog filter. And in this case, I think they pretty much nailed it. So we have a mixer here, so I could just turn this off. And now we hear nothing. Let's turn on the brass. And I'm still hearing nothing. There we go. So you can see the brass has its own independent filter. But it is paraphonic. So what that means is that that filter is, depending on how many notes you play, you're going to get that sort of behavior where it only moves once. Example here on the Polysix, if I play. Every voice has its own filter. Here, we're only hearing one filter's movement there, which is still pretty beautiful sounding. And it has a ADSR here, auto dampening. Forget what that does. I think it's not on this synth, but I've seen it on other ones. Versus if I have that on, let me see. Yeah, I was expecting it to affect the paraphonic behavior there. And you can see what's happening is the attack, decay, sustain, release is controlling both the VCF and the amplifier, just like it does here. I've only got one ADSR on this synthesizer. The advantage is I can put this into a gate mode. So what that's going to do is turn it into organ style, or essentially like when my fingers are on the keys, it's open, and then the moment I take them off, it's closed, full sustain, no release. See? Really useful for bass lines, actually. So you can program in different filter flavors, like, but still have the full sustain there. Let me see, who is it? 808 Gerald, welcome. Honestly, I have that Cherry Audio VST. I have it all. They sound cold and thin, not even close to the analog hardware. I don't know. We just were playing it a second ago. Sam, welcome. Dream Theater's amazing. Chris, welcome. So that's the brass section here. Let's turn on the strings and make sure. And so this is going to give us that sort of. And here we have some bowing. It sort of sounds to me almost like resonance or something like that. Vibrato intensity, but this is where we can get those like classic string machine type sounds. And many people kept their Tridents from the early 80s simply for that. They like didn't really care about the synthesizer section as much, although today it's one of my great white whales. I've always been looking for one. But you know, when you hit the ensemble, it sounds pretty good. Now let's jump over to the 6 here and try to sort of create that same sort of string sort of feel, but we actually have an ensemble effect on the Polysix, so I have that sub oscillator on. Let's turn that off. That'll be a fairer comparison. Kind of close. I feel like we need a little, and maybe not, and we also can't. It's a little different because we're using like more of a vibrato type effect on there. Yeah. So I think that, you know, we're going to jump in on all of this. One of the coolest things is we can actually turn multiple of these on at the same time. And so we're again ignoring the synthesizer section here and just let's just create like a breath and then a real slow strings here that comes in. Now I wonder, can we affect the range of the brass? Yeah, so let's bring the strings down an octave. Oh, we actually gonna have multiple ones at the same time. So that's very good. Let's bring the sustain up a bit. Paraphonically here. What a great kitten name. Really beautiful, just gorgeous vintage tones. And again, that's with the synthesizer section off right now. So, of course, we could jump in here. I'm just using these output switches here. Let's go back to the synth. Let's bring that down an octave. Like this. Just make like a really, really thick sound. Probably don't need as much volume, and then bring back in everything, right? 808, Gerald, we're going to have to just agree to disagree on that one. I think it sounds very good, and especially once we go back and forth with the Polysix here, you know. Over here. If I crank the resonance here, you could hear that this synth, well, that's interesting the way the resonance falls, the self-oscillation. This synth can get really thin. I found that if you set the knobs about the same, the envelopes seem like they're the same. Certain things are a little different on these synths, but like if we just kind of set the knobs to about where you'd expect them to be on the hardware, and then just kind of match that about where I have it there, you get similar sounds for sure. Too slow on the attack there. We can speed that up a bit. Also, I need to bring this up an octave. There we go. Should be closer. And I can turn VCO2 off with the old Chroma Polaris trick of just bringing the pulse width all the way through 0. So longer release. It's like, it's a little finicky on a little screen, but there we go. That's closer. One thing is like at about halfway on this vintage synth, it's already almost in self-oscillation, whereas here you got to go almost to 10. Little more decay time, and then it's not exactly the same, but that's almost more due to my programming, right? I just have to match these. I mean, 808 Jer, I mean, like, that's about as good as you could possibly ask from a software synthesizer. And, you know, when I checked out Atomica, which is my favorite Cherry Audio plugin, we shot it out against my Polyvox, which is my favorite vintage analog monosynth of all time. They didn't sound this close. And I called it out then, right? I was like, hey, look, it sounds like a Polyvox, but if you put them back to back, you could hear the difference. Whereas here, it's damned close. They've really been putting in the time and effort to get these things right on, because they know synth snobs like me are going to put it through its paces. They're, you know, companies nowadays, as long as there's some scum snobs in the chat, can I get some scum snobs? You know, we're keeping the pressure on these guys to put out products that sound this good. And in my opinion, we're basically there. It's Cherry Audio's now, with G4 software, in my opinion, putting out the most authentic sounding analog filters. Excited to check out Omnisphere 3 next week. We'll see what they've done, because they've added a bunch of new analog emulations too. Brett, you know, the conversation about in the mix, you're right. Okay, let me say that first. First and foremost, you're correct. In the mix, most audience members are not going to be able to tell the difference. But I kind of don't like I've found over the years that because I used to say it all the time too, that I don't love it quite as much as I used to, because I do think that little bit of extra filter sweetness you get, and we could be comparing two vintage analog synths, you know, comparing the Juno 6 and the Kwai SX240, and looking at those vintage analog filters and being like, ooh, one's a little sweeter than the other. So it's not even necessarily plug-in versus hardware. But I do think that there is something about when you hear a beautiful filter, which of course the Polysix has, that makes you play it differently. So it's like the decay needs to be longer and the release longer. And by the way, if we just kill the attack here, let's do the same thing. Let's put it into unison mode. Back to the Poly 6. Pretty much the same if we put it in unison mode now. So, I mean, as evidenced by my library, and this is just one wall, I have another wall covered in vintage synthesizers. I too enjoy a good hardware synthesizer, and I especially like the vintage ones because they have a tendency to have a little bit more character. Back in the day, they were just trying to put together the best possible sounding instrument, and it couldn't do everything. So they knew they had to fine tune it for whatever they thought this instrument was going to be used for. Nowadays, when they make a hardware synthesizer, it has to be able to do everything. It has to do basses, pads, leads. No one's going to buy a synth anymore for just one sound, you know? It has to be able to do everything. Even the little trinkety ones or the Eurorack ones or the desktop synths, they still have a tendency to be a little bit more vanilla. And I think that with this era of vintage synths, you get that, okay, we're just, you know, and the Trident is such a unique, interesting sort of thing where it's kind of like the ARP Quadra where they slammed a bunch of stuff together, but Korg was able to do this incredible thing where just this section of this vintage synthesizer alone is very comparable to some of the great synths like the Oberheim OBX and the Jupiter 8. Honestly, more than the Jupiter 4. I had a Jupiter 4 and I kept it because I thought the Polyvox sounded right about there. So I too really love a hardware synth, but I think what Cherry Audio's done is they've democratized the ability to get this type of sound into your productions. And I know people will say Behringer did, but let's just put that to the side. What do you want from a piece of software, but not that? I mean, we could go through and get real granular. For instance, let's get, you know, just one thing I did notice, right? So let's kill the resonance, bring the sustain all the way up, release all the way down. We'll do the same thing. We'll kill the resonance, cut off all the way up, release, sustain all the way up, right? Cut off frequency all the way up, resonance all the way down. Should be about the same. Let's, we got rid of the second oscillator. First oscillator, let's make it a sawtooth wave. And we'll do the same thing on the hardware. By the way, the knobs and everything are the exact same overall as what you would expect. It even says modulation generator, which is what it says over here on the synth. I don't know if you could see that on camera, but essentially it is, even though we all call this an LFO nowadays, Cherry Audio went through the effort to make it really feel like a Trident. So we should have a sawtooth wave. I take it out of unison, put it into poly mode, and same thing here, poly mode. So we should have, notice we have a much brighter, more monopoly-esque sawtooth wave. Now I don't know what that is exactly because the Polysix has this incredibly dark sawtooth wave. And you can hear the difference is night and day. You have like a real sawtooth wave on Trident Mk III, and on the Polysix we have this really damp sort of wave, which is interesting. I've always thought that as you play chords, it's almost like it opens the filter up or something, because if I play chords, it sounds closer, right? Listen to the difference of if I play one and then I add more notes to it. So Tron, welcome to the Sari. We've got Sari. Sonic, I don't even think I said hi earlier. Tron Dog lives. How's it going, everybody? So there is a difference. They're not identical. But also, I don't know that the original Trident really sounds exactly like this. This is a very unique design that Korg came up with. These are discrete oscillators, which are actually rare from vintage synths. Most of them were chip-based, just like the filter is chip-based. The Trident had discrete oscillators as well, but I can't guarantee you that they sound the same as this. So I think a question I would ask myself if I was diving into, should I buy this software synthesizer for $69 right now, which is, it's a great deal, but you can't spend $69 every time a new synthesizer plugin comes out, or you'd be broke. Even the richest people would be broke because there's that many synth plugins that come out. So I would ask yourself, you know, is it vintage enough, right? You know, if we bring in some of the brass. Differences. That's right, Sam. I mean, you can hear some stuff, but especially once you start layering, right? Now, when we go to the effects here, we can check this out. Right now I have this phaser off. I was trying to match the phaser in the Polysix to this phaser, and it's not gonna happen. Although it can sound good. This is a dual phaser. I have the mix 1-2 mix over here, and then the dry mix down here. You can hear what I'm talking about. It's got a very kind of overpowering sound. If I try to match that. Try to make sure I'm doing this right. Cheers. Sonic is right. It is the absolute best community on YouTube. A lot of other synth tubers' YouTube comment sections are pretty rat fucked, but mine are amazing because of you guys. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you guys so much for being my friends and making this channel what it is. So, could we do the mid-side thing? MIDI Alchemy, welcome, by the way. Could we do the mid-side thing on the plugin to expand the stereo spectrum? There's all sorts of things we can do to expand the stereo spectrum. Even I think we can control the stereo width of the effects. The brass and the strings away from each other in the plugin. I mean, we could get really huge, whereas we'll never quite get... There's a little bit of filter sweetness, isn't there, though, in the Polysix, right? Especially on the releases. You get that really nice vowely SSM thing. But yeah, I mean, so the plugin goes much further. One cool thing they did was they actually emulated the Bucket Brigade delay flanger. So this is the flanger from the Trident. It's kind of frustrating because there's no perfect Korg vintage synth. The original Trident came with a flanger, an analog flanger. Oh, happy birthday, Henley. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat for Henley? Fuck. How are you doing, Dub? So there's a flanger on the original Trident, which they've faithfully emulated here. Whereas the Polysix has a chorus, a phaser, and an ensemble. They're all monaural. That is to say, they're not stereo. So unlike a Juno 6 or something like that, where you've got a stereo chorus, you don't have that. And I believe that's the same on the Trident, unfortunately. So, but here's how this sounds. Okay, so let's see if the Trident can do something like that. Let's see what we could do. So again, I can kind of set my cutoff and resonance to similar values, and let's see what we got. Modulation generator here. I have a delay of about 7, so we can put that in. We can change the shape here, which of course we can't do on the Polysix. In fact, we just have an LED where a shape knob would be. Here they were nice enough to put it here so we could see the frequency. Right now it looks like that LED is just on, but it's just going faster than a cracked out dolphin. And so what we'll do is we'll just try to see if we can kind of get that. And we have a bunch of switches here. Hard to see. Wow. On retrig wheel. So there, I think we can start to see, and maybe, you know, big apologies to Cherry Audio if I'm missing something obvious that I'm like, oh, of course, that's why we're getting different behavior there. There are times, though, where a vintage synth could just take you a place that doesn't necessarily, isn't 100% reproducible yet in software, but damn close in terms of what they've been able to do for this type of sound is not something you're going to see that often. For 99% of sounds, I think they've nailed it. It's definitely there. Yes, and Christian Valdez Osorio, welcome. There's a video, Alex Ball, the great Alex Ball. I'm basically the Great Value or Timu Alex, where you can take the individual sounds, I think, and that's how they get the idea of different effects chains for every module. Right, that's correct. You do have different outputs for the different sections in Trident, so you can route everything different ways. So let's just go back to a new preset. Oh, it's funny, their new preset does have the brass and strings set on, which I guess is pretty cool. I'm going to turn the brass and strings off. I want to make some bass sounds. So we're going to turn this off, and I'm going to kind of just reset the synth a bit. We'll set it into gate mode. For us, the way we can do that is sustain all the way up, decay doesn't matter, attack all the way down, release all the way down. And then let's just see what we have in terms of, how that should kind of translate. Again, the Polysix is much more muted. So let's try to get a cool, like, bassline sound going. It sounds really nice and throaty, doesn't it? Now I'm wondering, will this be where the Polysix breaks, right? Can it sound as throaty? So we still got that sub bass in here. Oh, we have the second oscillator here, so let me turn that off just to make it fair. Oh wait, let me make sure that's on the right. Sorry if that's, I don't know if that sound is coming through. Desktop audio is down, good. Back up. I lost my sweet meter that I look at just to make sure that I'm kind of in the ballpark here. So now, I don't know if there's a vintage mode knob anywhere on here like you would see on a sequential synth or a G-Force plugin. I don't see it. And so I happen to know a little thing or two about the Polysix. So let's check this out. Let's put it back into EG mode. It's amazing how quickly we could get to sort of like a poly sound. So, and then we could do the same thing over here. We just make sure that we kind of get some relatively similar times on the envelope. So we do more decay, less release. Little more envelope, little bit more filter decay time. Touchy, a little too much envelope. Very close, right? This one's now brighter just because of the saws themselves are brighter. So my point here, though, to give you an example of what something they might not have modeled, and that is if you go into the service manual, the spec for the Polysix is super interesting below middle C. They actually expect you, when you service this properly, for the notes above middle C to be correct, I believe, but slightly going flat as you go down. And if I pull up a tuner, you could see that, but you could also just use your ears and hear that going up sounds very good. As I go down, notice how it's like a little detuned, right? And that's just, there's not more than one oscillator. That's just the oscillators themselves. And I think that's a big part of the beefiness of the Polysix. Versus, yeah, you can see that actually in Trident as you go down. Now, for all I know, that's how a Trident actually is, right? And maybe it was only with the Polysix that they started slightly flattening out the expected response of these keys. But it's an interesting difference. And it's one of those things where I always appreciate if there's a good and it's probably just like hidden somewhere because we've got a whole sequencer section. It's pretty crazy how much they crammed into this. And I have it pretty small just so that on my live stream it's about right so that it fits on camera here. And there's so many things that I have to lean in pretty good to see it. Now, this is a fully resizable plugin, so that shouldn't stop you because you can expand it out. But you can see that they crammed as much as they possibly could into this. So, I mean, we've got all sorts of stuff. They've got their new lush verb in here, which probably sounds great. For me, I would say that they're very comparable. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Is the magic in Trident Mark III? I think it is there, but I could understand there's always going to be some people who just don't believe that the hardware is well emulated in software. I think they did a very good job. Am I going to sell my Polysix? Probably not. It's a very good synth. I like it. I love the experience of the hands-on controls and just It is, I've said it many times, this is the most wild synth I own in terms of it does have that kind of flat sort of savage nature where every bit of the envelopes are slightly sloppy. So if you do like a really long decay time, for instance, and we right, we have like a very it's pretty crazy, the sound. In this case, I think I'd be surprised if we could get that. Slow that all the way down. To me, it's just like kind of always going to sound. See, it's got like these irregularities in there. It's definitely got that, like if you pay attention to the release here, like you could hear how there is something going on with the release that's breaking up that from being super rigid like you would expect from a digital synth. You could hear that difference, but what we're not hearing necessarily, a little too much there. Let's try a little bit less. It's hard to match them. See, it's like you gotta be real touchy with. I wonder if I would fail this blind test with the filter. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the Polysix, so I think I'd be able to pick up on that. But as far as just the character of the filter, man, they've really got it. Maybe it's because they've done similar Prophet SSM style filters in their previous products. I don't know. But what do you guys think? I just noticed I'm way behind on the chat here. So let me just catch up here real quick. Brett said the emulation is great. I've heard the Polysix sound better at times and the Cherry better at times. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good. So I want to take a second and just pull up some presets here. One cool thing is we can pull up different collections. So for instance, I have the Momentum pack here. And then we could go through and just pick like some pads. So let's see what we have here. So I'm assuming this is using some of the... Is there an arpeggiator that I didn't notice somewhere in here? Maybe it's in the motion or something. It sounds like an arpeggiator, or it might be something to do with this motion lane here. Yeah, being able to work with presets. I don't know. For me with the Polysix, a bunch of the other ones, Juno 6, 70M, Matrix 12, Andromeda, Polaris, which I just used for a client that running some of their MIDI files through my Polaris today. I just use it in manual mode, right? I don't ever even attempt to use the presets because there's a couple of decent presets in the Polysix, but nothing that I'm necessarily, yeah, but you know, Sean Johnson, big fan of Cherry Audio for that breath control. You know what I'm talking about. Let's check out some more of these pads here. That is beautifully programmed. Like you can just hear the love that went into a sound like that. Thank you very much, Rob. How are you doing, my friend? Thank you very much, Rob. How are you doing, my friend? Cheers, brother. This is a fun one. It is hard to argue, isn't it? Very, very cool. Just wild. And I always think that that's an advantage too, right? About something like a VST as opposed to the hardware. Because if you wanted to make like a real preset pack that was as useful as this, not only would everybody have to own a vintage Polysix, right? But then they'd also have to own a bunch of hardware stuff. They'd have to own a bunch of pedals like I do, you know, a bunch of either like vintage guitar pedals or rack gear, shit like that. And that's fun. I love the experimentation of having all this stuff and plugging it in. But as far as like, let me say it this way. I do music professionally as a producer, meaning that when an artist comes in, they've got a song, they've got a deadline. And when I don't have a deadline, I love to plug in gear that I don't usually use and try to see different ways I can wire things up and whatever. But when I'm, you know, under the gun and I'm like, this song's not going to fucking reach the fucking goal. It's not going to hit the finish line up. You know, let's check out some bass sounds. Unless I pull up a bass sound. Fascinating. I can't even tell like what everything's doing here. Sometimes you just need a patch, right? You know, and so it gives an opportunity for nerds like myself to actually, you know, make some cool stuff. This is almost like a Tom Sawyer type sound. Yeah. So this is an opportunity for a lot of people to be creative, right? Again, we're just in the momentum pack. We go to the full collection here and just, you know, kind of run through. Is, you know, we can see we're using brass and the synthesizer here. So let's just turn off the brass. You can hear that's the basis of it. But then there's this little guy. And so I like the way that sort of sound for this type of bass line more. Now I can add this back in. VCO mixer. I guess I could turn the VCO off here. And it's pan too. Interesting. Oh, here's the pan for these guys. Okay, so I'm starting to understand things very slowly. Let's go to the effects. This sounds good. So we got a flanger chorus, an EQ. Let's turn that off. Let's get some distortion in here. Now, let's see, is this EQ pre or post? We'll be able to tell. Which is perfect. So it's pre-perfect. What that means is that it's before, I think it's before, and then maybe the EQ here, we could bring in some, what is it here? Let's pick a frequency. Can we go like down low? Yeah, like 100 and bring it back in. So a little trick with distortion. A lot of the times if you put something through distortion and it gets like real muddy, it just sounds like dog shit, right? Consider bringing some of the bass out, because what could be happening is that bass content is overloading the circuits and giving you that. Steve, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Yo, can I get a scum cheers in the chat for the singer of And One? How's it going? I do agree that limitations are great, because anytime I go to make a sound on the Polysix, for instance, I know I'm not going to get it all the way here, right? Dave, I have not. Oh, is it 3 for $99? I didn't even know that. It's definitely $69, but maybe you can get 3 of their plugins at once for $99. That's sick. Yeah, so, you know, for instance, if I want to get as an experiment, I love this bass sound. It's actually a pretty body pop bass sound, if I do say so myself. And now, if I go to the Polysix and we go to try to do a bass type thing, we're going to have to kind of figure it out a different path. For instance, I'm like, to get close, we're going to have to put it in unison first off. We could add some VCO action here. We had better get that sub-oscillator involved, right? Let's go to pulse width modulation and add some of that in. So that's just with the square and the sub, right? Now I'm gonna add some PWM into it. Let's add some effects. So let's add the chorus in. So this is the chorus here. Now we're in the phaser, which has the most low end, but it's also the most extreme of the effects. And then the ensemble here. For anything but like maybe a gritty Reese, probably a little rough. Let's put it into that mode as well, the gate mode. Let's turn the effects off again. Ooh. Piano Synthaholic. I am working on a video right now for the best synthesizer deals this Black Friday. Essentially, I'm waiting for a couple of companies to get back to me with the specific details of what they're going to be doing for Black Friday. But I haven't seen you in the live streams before, I believe. I'm sorry if I have. But definitely subscribe if you haven't, because the video is coming. So that's about, I think I'm in the neighborhood of like... about as aggressive as I'm going to get with the Polysix. Back to Trident Mark III. So it's interesting. I was like, man, that's unbeatable, but... Now, of course, we'd need to add some delay, maybe some stereo chorus, some stuff. Probably going to be VSTs, although I am going to reach out to a couple of companies that I like. But I haven't. I'm gonna have to see. Black Friday, as far as I can tell, is most of the time software synths are where you're going to see the big savings. The obvious examples are like Korg and Rio, right? They do 50% off sales. The hardware guys, at the end of the day, even if they want to sell the stuff cheaper, they really can't cut it down too much. So it's just going to be kind of interesting. Awesome, Piano Synthaholic. I appreciate it. Now, wait a second. Probably a little bit of both together. Pretty good. I think Donner is a great sort of competitor opposition to Behringer. I always cover their hardware synths when they come out with one. You know, they also have a lot of flexibility in their pricing, which is amazing because of how cheap their stuff is. But I shouldn't say flexibility. I should say variability, because I saw all sorts of different prices. So it depends. What's a good budget-friendly computer to use these? That's a great question. I don't know that I have the answer for that one. I built my own computer, so I'm one of those nerds who likes to build computers, and that's not feasible for most people. Building computers is just as deep of an endeavor as synthesizers are. I am not that deep into it. I mean, I just kind of like look on Newegg and buy some stuff. Yeah, like a MacBook Air, something like that. Anybody else have any good examples? I mean, I feel like most modern laptops could run this VST, no problem. Right now, it's using 0.08% of my CPU. I'm going to do a real-time CPU check on it to see what my real-time CPU is hanging out at about 25%, meaning I've got about 75% horsepower left. And that's including things like I have console 1 and stuff like that as well running. So it's not just this one thing. But it should be pretty well optimized to run on any sort of, lots of Mac fans here. So yeah, so my computer is kind of coming up on that 10-year mark, Brett. And I think, with a new software synthesizer that's not out yet, I can't talk about it. But that synth, it's not Omnisphere 3, it's something else. It was able to finally tap my computer out. It's the first time I've had like one instance of a synthesizer open, and with max settings. So I'm not saying like everyday use, but we're talking like, 64 voices of unison or something like that. I was able to tap the computer out, and I was like, damn it. It's probably time to start thinking about a new computer, but would rather buy another expensive vintage synth instead. So, I mean, just they're different sounds, right? They're definitely different sounds. If we wanted to just sort of try to get there with this, now that we've got a great sound on the Polysix. We got to put 6-voice unison on. I think my Polysix is actually a little hot. We got to put oscillator 2 into pulse width mode, down an octave, and then up here, we're going to put this into pulse width modulation and try to see. Very close, isn't it? Kind of a little bit of harmonic that's missing. Very close, though. Little hollowness in the mid-range. Mini Alchemy asks, so would you say modern VSTs like this one are modeling the electronics versus samples with clever EQing to simulate filters, etc.? Versus samples with clever EQing to simulate filters. I'm not sure I understand your question. Are they modeling the electronics? I know that Cherry Audio, for instance, on Atomica, they had the sound design god who worked on that actually like breadboarded out, meaning like created his own, wired his own Polyvox filter and was doing comparisons of that to the plugin, right? So created the circuit and everything, and that's part of what went into it. I'm assuming, considering this sounds even more authentic, that yes, they are really getting granular in component modeling things, but I'm not a software developer, so I don't want to like promise you that's exactly what's happening. I do think some of this stuff can be done with just really good ears. You just go back and forth, you go, okay, so when I crank the resonance, I lose this much bass. On the software, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it's very close. Oh, that's what it is. I've got the frequency routed to the LFO. That's what that is. So we need to bring that to the LFO and bring this frequency to God knows what. Funny how very small amounts here. What is that, 2.3? I do think the frequency can go faster on the Polysix than it can on Trident, so that's giving it a little bit of an advantage to give it that extra little harmonic. That's what it is. Very hard to get that like right in the pocket there. Very close though, I mean. So, okay, it's probably enough noodling trying to get those two sounds. They're not going to exactly get there. So it's fucking close though. And again, that's why I didn't want to hyper focus on the Polysix, because one of these days I will get a Trident in the studio, god damn it. I really want to find a Trident Mark II in particular, because the Trident Mark I only has one envelope per voice, and I want that second envelope like Trident Mark III has here. You could also probably guess that they modeled it off of a Mark III, which I want to say came out the year after the Polysix, 1982, or maybe even 83 or so, somewhere in that ballpark. The way you can tell is a Trident Mark I has the word Trident on the right side over here of the panel, and a slightly different paint job. The Mark II has it over here. So that could also be a thing. We could be listening to the difference in sonic differences between the Mark I and Mark II Tridents might also line up differently with the Polysix, right? Because the Polysix came out between the Mark I and the Mark II, which is, you know, interesting. So it's there's many factors that go into this, and it's just unfair to try to make them sound identical. But what I would say is, considering they're not even the same synth, god damn it, my hat's off to you, Cherry Audio. I think this is the most authentic sounding plugin they've done yet. And, you know, that's saying a lot, because I'm one to call bullshit on software companies. I've done it before and I'll do it again. In this case, I can't compare the brass and string section. But I think it's just interesting. All right, so I want to check out some brass patches here. Let's just try some things out. Little JMJ type vibe there. Oh, that's very nice. And a little cute little... Very cute little clarinet sound there. Every brass you need. Oh, this is more my ballpark. You can hear it. Actually, most of the sound's coming from the brass section here. And then here's the synth part here. Little cheesy brassy for me. Just turn that resonance down. And then together now modified for vulture culture liking. Very nice little fanfare sort of sound. What else here? Let's check out the strings, because that's going to be interesting too. Really interesting to see acidic ARP 303 in the string section. Let's just go ahead and see. Pretty sure that's not supposed to be in there, but I love the fact that it is. 70s phase string machine. So this is that JMJ type sound, hopefully. Definitely too thin to be like that real sound. Having said that, it is a beautiful, really cool sort of space to it. Let's try String Machine Dream. That's much more that sound, right? That patch doesn't need quite that much feedback. Let's kill that real quick. Aside from the ridiculous amount of feedback that it has, I think that patch is very, very good. Now, I wish I could see who the author was. Nope. I was hoping I could see. I always want to see who the authors are for these, you know, because that one's beautiful. And I'd love to listen to more of that person's story. It's probably James Terrace, because he's the fucking man. When it comes to making great sounds, James Terrace is where it's at. So I'm guessing it's him. Let's try Distress Strings. Oh, good for like a little horror action. Chamber strings. That's fine. Lo-fi string wash. Let's hope to God. Lo-fi strings. Ah, the sound of a vape. Someone hitting their smoking utensil. That's good. Renaissance strings. Let's try this one out. really cool sound, not really strings in my opinion, but Poly aftertouch piano pad. Let's see. I'm using old Polysix MIDI controller so you can hear that the aftertouch is very on or off, unfortunately. Bright release. And you might think to yourself, some of these are like really modern sounding, but so are the Korg Legacy Collection presets. I wouldn't like really use any of those. Can I get some vape cheers in the chat? I think I'm out of drink, unfortunately. That's a very beautiful one. Bright Star Steps. Very cool. Classic Poly sweep. Classic rich swell. Come on, give me what I need. In a church loft somewhere. I quite like that organ sound. Let it be known that that organ sound is not bad. Bandpass. Oh, that's a nice little gritty, like throaty. Oh, that's very nice. By the way, you do have that different VCF response. So what we're looking at there, going back over here, I don't know why I swapped to the keyboard. I didn't need to do that. But you got bandpass. We can put it in a notch, right? And then it's going to sound like this. Which is a very cool thing. We didn't even really mess in with that. Polysix clone. This is interesting. I wonder if that's supposed to be program A1, which is... Then there's also D8. It's not really either of those. It's kind of in between the two. But it's kind of fun that there's a Polysix patch in there. Pure analog. Definitely the type of patch I make all the time over on this channel. Ringer mod flutters. Now this is interesting. Let me go to the effects here. We've got a ring modulator, and you can see it's the same ring modulator design as a CS synthesizer like the one behind me. Interesting. I don't, rising flutter. Love a flutter that rises. Are we going to rise? No, we're just going to kind of, it should be kind of like, weak flutter, not needs Viagra flutter. I'm sure that's, I shouldn't be mean. I'm sure that's somebody's favorite patch, but Let me just be clear here. It was a cool patch. It was a very cool patch. Just the name threw me off. Sure, it was made by someone much more talented than I, but just saying. I like this one. Very cool. And what's going on there that's causing that? Just notice it's in low pass filter mode. And there's no effects on this one, right? So something's causing this really interesting phaser-y type sound, but it's not the effects. Huh. I really don't know what's going on that's causing that. Very fascinating. Someone knows what they're doing. Sweeping bandpass. Let's see. Paul Oakenfold used to use this type of sound all the time. You know, that type of thing. Just throw a transgate on it, you know. Percussion here. Definitely funky snare. It's pretty good. Sounds like a sample. So some stuff in there. Let's check out motion. Holy shit, there's a lot of motion stuff. So you can see we've got this whole sequencer section I didn't even get close to talking about. Whoa. All right, let's just move on from that. Really cool, though. Sort of JMJ type thing. Very cool. Let's see. Clockwork Ring mods. Let's try that one. You know, $69 Aquatic Borealis. Like, not. It's a lot. What'd you get for that? A lot of fun stuff in here. Generative sequence and ARP. Highway to Orion, great title. Let's see if it delivers. Pretty crazy what can be done with that. So let's see what else we got here. Instant Croft. Let's see if it's a tribute to my boy. Beautiful. Plucked Abyss. Oh yeah, you're speaking my fucking language. Am I like not selecting these or something? Like there's clearly reverb. Do I go to each lane? Aha, that's what's happening here. I see. Okay. Thank God, because I was just about to be like, what the hell? That doesn't make sense. Because I was going to say the reverb on this, little bright for my liking. But very good. Very cool patch. Seraph. Character from the Matrix. Favorite ones of all, I think. So, you know, that's a beautiful place to maybe call it for the evening. I think it is very good. I know it's not for everybody. There's always going to be those people who prefer hardware. You know, the other day, I've gotten it to the point now that all of these synths are hooked up, MIDI'd up, so all I have to do to use them is plug them in, and I even have kind of like 3 rows where I've got the audio. I've got if I want to send MIDI to them from my MIDI controller or whatever synth I have up here at the moment. And then I also have RIA insert. I use Reaper, so that basically makes it like using a VST in the sense of all the MIDI notes anyways. With that, I think it's so good. I think it's very good. And Cherry Audio should really be proud of themselves. I think they've taken a big step forward with this one. You know, will I sell my Polysix because I have Trident Mk III? No. There's still something in there. And I hope I've both... If I've accomplished 2 things, what I would want it to be is A, to show off how incredible Trident Mk III is. And then also show off how incredible the Polysix is. Case for vintage synthesizers, you know, that there still is a reason to have them. And then also make the case for people who are, you know, hardware snobs like myself, that the VSTs have gotten very good recently. It's not like it was 10 years or even 5 years ago. I really don't believe there was anything that sounded this good 5 years ago. Not in terms of just like the raw vintage emulation, right? Omnisphere 2's been out for a while, and I think it's always sounded great. But it wasn't necessarily trying to emulate a vintage synth the way this is. And I think that now, 40 Thieves. Did you get MIDI mixers? No, I have Motu MIDI Express 128s. I've actually got 3 of them. I want to buy a 4th one and MIDI up these last 3 synths here. So that'll be all 26 synths in the room, MIDI'd up, ready to go, ready to fire at any moment. And we really could just turn any of them on and start playing, which is kind of the goal. Nenko, I appreciate that very much. I'm always trying to ride the, thread the needle of, honesty first, of course, making sure that when I present a product, I do so with no bias. But of course I have biases, but I tried my best to avoid being aggressively biased. But also to show its deficiencies, so that, because there are some people who will have heard some of the things that aren't identical to the Polysix in this stream. They're going to go, nope, not for me. And not that I want to cut into Cherry Audio sales, but what I really want to do is present you, the potential buyer, with a good insight that you're not going to get just by listening to the demos, and not going to get listening to, just like what any company has to say about their own product. And even certain synth tubers who I think are great, they can be sort of like a little everything sounds good to them. Let me say it that way. Trust me, I have B. Selleck. If I buy a couple of Rolly Soft synths for you, will you check them out? Of course I would. Playing all the synths in the dungeon. I've been meaning to do it for a while. A bigger part of it is like figuring out how to do like some sort of live looping thing with all of them so it doesn't get too boring. I've got 2 MIDI mixers, Roland A880s, and a bigger audio mixer, Yamaha MG206C, to have everything up and ready to go. That's awesome. Would you prefer to gig with the Polysix or Trident on Max Air? Sorry, what do you mean by Max Air, Rob? I'm very stupid sometimes. Maybe I'm missing something. But for me, it's not that I wouldn't ever bring the Polysix out, because I think it's pretty much as roadworthy as anything else. It's just mine in particular, I have so much like fondness for that I wouldn't want to see this one get hurt. Some part of me is like, maybe someone else. I kind of suspect that not every Polysix sounds the same, more so than other vintage synths. If you buy a JX8P, it's going to sound pretty much in the ballpark of the other ones, but my Polysix just sounds so unique, I'd be terrified if something happened to it. So let's see. Gasper Pini. I probably said that terribly wrong. You should totally do a studio tour video showing how you route all of your audio and MIDI, explaining your whole workflow. That would be super interesting to see. I was about to do it about 6 months ago, and then I forgot what I bought. I bought something. Might have been the Matrix 12, and I was like, well, got to redo everything. And I guess it would be good to take a snapshot of it now. It's getting kind of back to a place where I like it, but there's also the possibility that it won't stay this way, or there'll be I use an RME Digiface, whatever the USB 32 in 32 out USB interface is. I've been considering something like a Presonus Studio Live 64, something like that, to get 64 tracks in, because right now I do run a few of the synths through a mixer, and then that's stereo out in basically all the romplers. I appreciate it, Lonnie. Brett says, I've triggered VSTs for my DX7 for years, can really get great sounds from software, but there are different things that add to inspiration. That's where hardware has niches as well. Damien, I have not done a full studio tour, and I need to. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ninko. I love a loud print. Got some good... Any shirt that has some birds on it that aren't flamingos, I'm into. Never wear a flamingo shirt. Yeah, Army makes the best as far as the interfaces go. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. The Motu NTP AV. I honestly only have them because I buy them used for like $100, and I know how they work, you know, like, and for me, I'm not doing anything crazy with MIDI. Honestly, like, all I'm doing is note on, note off. I don't do any CC stuff. When I sort of, the way I do a lot of it is I'll kind of program a sound, walk over to the computer, actually get in the session, play what I want to play from my master keyboard up here, and record that MIDI, then sit into the MIDI back, and then tweak the sound, and then do a recording where I modulate anything I want to modulate. So I'm never really needing to use MIDI CCs that way. Flamingos are not fucking real. Sari asks, can the Motu 128 be daisy chained? I don't know exactly what you mean. The way I have it hooked up to my computer is with 3 separate USB ports to my 3 separate Motus. It's every so often my dog gets confused about which one's 2 or 3. For some reason, 1, it always knows which one's 1. Nothing wrong with that, MIDI Alchemy, as long as it's working for you. AMT's daisy chained. I don't know. Narco Traficante shirt. Love that. Sam's got a spare Eventide H3000. Oh, that's one of those legendary effects processors. Like, I don't know. I don't have one because A, they're like $3,000 usually. And B, they're just, you know, I'm kind of leaning away from stuff that requires a lot of menu diving right now, but of course, like Crystal Echoes and stuff like that. It's so iconic. Yeah, you saw him in St. John, not in fucking Florida. That's for sure. Okay, with that, I think this is a good place to call it for the evening. Yeah, of course, there's going to be Omnisphere content coming up, right? What do you guys think? Of course, I'm going to get Omnisphere 3 the moment I can. Tuesday, it's coming out, so very exciting. You could probably expect... I was actually thinking I might even do a bonus stream next Tuesday. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like. I think it would be pretty cool, so drop a black cat emoji in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Otherwise, though, I will see you guys next Wednesday. Continue to be excellent. I appreciate y'all very much. And, yeah, cheers.